Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Hilde.
Thanks. My name is Hilde. I'm an alcoholic. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you, Tony, for asking. I'll give you a little hint what we're dealing with here. I get a little nervous when I talk, and I was talking, I think last weekend or the weekend before, and my sponsor was there, and we were getting coffee, and she had just got done telling me that she had her favorite mug with her, that, you know, she's been looking for a mug for ages, this is the best mug ever, or whatever, and as we were getting coffee, I managed to spill coffee all over her and break her mug. And
sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
perfectly imperfect. That's what we got going on here. So I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's nice to see so many people here I know. I normally come to the Sunday night Ohio, and I love this room, so it's handy. Let's see, I was born in London. I grew up in a pub, and no, I really did. My grandparents owned the pub, and I am an only child and an only grandchild, and only children like myself are really good at entertaining ourselves. That's what we do. And for me, my playground was the cellar. And I have to tell you, I had a thing about alcohol long before I ever drank it. You know, I like the shapes of the bottles and the colors and the fancy labels. And, you know, I always share this because it's just clear in my head like yesterday. But, I mean, I used to line the whiskey bottles up on one side and the vodka bottles on the other. And I'd have the whiskey bottles chatting to the vodka bottles, and they'd be chatting to me, and I'd be chatting to them. And, you know, whiskey was the bad guys, and vodka was the good guys. And all of that was still true in my 20s. But, you know, I loved it. I loved it. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous describes me lovely around page 33. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically what it says is it doesn't matter how much you drink or how often you drink, it's what happens when you drink. And that many who are merely potential alcoholics often become the real thing in a relatively short amount of time, particularly true of women. And I am one of them women. You know, by 16, I had an ulcer. At 17, I got done for drunk driving. At 18, I had a heart attack. And 6 months later, I was in my first mental hospital. And that's when drink was working, you know. I'm serious. It all went downhill after that. Over the next 3 years, I was in and out of 5 mental hospitals. And the longest I was ever out of a mental hospital was for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I was in my own flat. I had the curtains drawn, the answer machine on, and a fridge full of Asti Spumante, vodka, and Michelob Light, because I was always watching calories, too. You know, for those 2 weeks, I didn't see or speak to another human being, and I have a clear memory of standing in a shower, drinking a cold Mick Light, not knowing if it was day or night, not caring, and thinking it just doesn't get any better than this. You know, I was happy. But what happened was I got a knock on the door one day, and it was me mom, my shrink, 2 policemen, and 2 nurses, and a very legal-looking piece of paper. And they shot me in the arse with something and put me in a jacket with really long arms. And I came to at the Institute for the Living in Hartford, Connecticut. And I felt like it was sort of surreal, like I'd been on candid camera, I'd been punked or something, you know, because I found out that I'd been committed for being a danger to myself and others. I hadn't seen anybody for 2 weeks. I couldn't figure out who the others were, you know what I mean? Really bothered me. And anybody who's been in a place like that knows the people in those places are crazy. You know, now, I knew that there was something wrong with me. I don't think I've ever been a full ticket. I don't think I'm ever going to be a full ticket. And quite honestly, I do not believe there's a program in the world that will make me a full ticket. What I do know is that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me tools that today allow me to act as if I'm a full ticket. And I'm running with that today, you know, but at the time, I knew there was something wrong and I knew they didn't know what it was. And I had this roommate, and it was really obvious what was wrong with her, right? I mean, she had rage attacks. 1 minute she'd be fine, and then she'd snap. And she'd start punching out windows and going for nurses and be chaos. And they had this thing called wet packing. And all these nurses would come in, they would tackle her to the floor, wrap her in cold, wet sheets, and toddle her away. Now, she had something I didn't have, and that was friends locally. And her friends used to smuggle money in all the time. So our room always had money hidden in it. So when she'd get toddled away, I'd start thinking, because I'm a thinker, right? Started thinking, what a waste it is to leave all that money sitting around, you know. So I used to go AWOL on her dime. And the first time I went AWOL, I had $50 on me. And I ended up in downtown Hartford. And I had no clue what I was going to do. And this little fella wandered up to me and he said, Psst, do you want to buy a ticket to Prince? Now, I didn't know who Prince was. I am truly an AC/DC Black Sabbath kind of girl, but I'm thinking a dark auditorium, this might work, you know. So I get these tickets, I smuggle in 2 bottles of vodka, I sit in the nosebleed seats, and while he did his little Raspberry Beret thing, I got absolutely legless. And after the concert, I was wandering around Hartford, and I ended up in this park with these fellas, winos really, passing a bottle. And I sat down with them and just started drinking with them. And they never said a word. They let me drink with them. They kept looking at me like stupid or crazy. But they were good as gold. And the next morning, as dawn came, the white van with the blue letters pulled up, Institute for the Living. And I stood up and said, I got to go, my ride's here, you know. And it's a true story. And you know, these fellas just looked at each other like, yep, crazy, right? So I get back and I'd have to build up my little trust points, and anybody who's been institutionalized knows about that. And you know, as the time was going on, I was getting tired, and I wasn't really going as far when I went AWOL. And one of the last times I went AWOL, I ended up in this little pizza joint right around the corner from the hospital. And when I went in, I said to myself, okay, Hilde, this time we are going to do this properly. We're going to do this like a lady. So I go in, I order a slice of pizza and 2 pitchers of beer. I sit down in the booth and I start pouring it in the glass, because we're going to do this like a lady. We're doing this properly, right? But just as I got started, some of the nurses from my unit came in on their break. So now I'm down in the booth with the pitcher up to me mouth, trying to get it down me as fast as I can before they see me, you know. That's just my drinking. And when my year was coming to an end, I had to go before a board of psychiatrists. And my psychiatrist stood up and said, Hilde will never live in normal society. She is completely incapable. And in fact, his recommendation was that I did a minimum of another year. It took me 2.5 months to convince that board to let me out. I did a total of 14.5 months there. And in hindsight, I think he may have had a point, because I got out and I moved from Hartford to Hamden, and I got a little flat and I got a little job, and I met a fella, and he turned out to be a coke dealer. Now, I had never done coke, and the attractive thing to me was that I could drink longer, right? Who knew? And But what happened was, in a relatively short amount of time, I was making $700 a week at work. I had a $1,500 a week coke habit. And when you did the math, it wasn't coming out terribly well. And I was sitting on me counter one day, and I looked out at me flat. I think I was drinking a case of McLight at the time. And I looked out at me flat, and I thought, Hilde, you've sold everything, including your curtains, for coke. And I thought, if you're hanging out with people who will buy your curtains, we have a problem here. Do you know I never did coke again? In fact, I'd be in parties and people around me would be doing coke, and my head would go, remember the curtains, right? Now, I think that's what makes me a real alcoholic, because far worse things happen to me drinking than ever happen to me with coke. Never once did my head ever say, don't drink. What it might say is, don't drink the red wine because it makes you cry. Stay away from the whiskey because it makes you mean. Or my version of chapter 3, switching from Scotch to brandy or Scott to Randy. But it never said don't drink, right? So I'm in Hampden. I get done for drunk driving, drunk and disorderly, indecent exposure, and I think, England was so much better. What was I thinking? And I moved back to England, and I wouldn't be in England very long, and I get done for drunk driving, drunk and disorderly, indecent exposure, and I think, America was so much better. What was I thinking? And that's really my drinking in a nutshell. It was always going to be better somewhere else, and everywhere I went, there I was. And, I love that analogy. It's a bit like changing cabins on the Titanic. The view changes, but the destination is the same. And I have a long list of arrests for indecent exposure. And I know I don't look the type today. Well, maybe I do, whatever. But something happens when you add alcohol to this alcoholic. And I know I'm not alone in Alcoholics Anonymous because I've heard a lot of other women share. But as soon as you add alcohol to this alcoholic, for whatever reason, I just know that you have to see my tits. Now, I tried everything for that not to be true. And I know it's part of my alcoholism because I don't feel the need to show them to you now, right? So I'm back and forth, and I'm back in England this time, and I'm tending bar with this fella, Andy, and Andy and I have been great friends for a very long time. And Andy's birthday was on New Year's Eve, so we started drinking on Christmas Eve, as you do. And now, I've always been a blackout drinker. I used to call it losing time, right? I'd lose time, a couple of hours, I might lose the weekend, whatever. But I had assumed that when I had lost time, I had passed out quietly somewhere. I found out that that's not true, because on the 3rd of January, Andy called me, and he said, "Are you ready to pick out rings?" And I had no clue what he was talking about. And he brought over this video, and I'm on this video, and I look great. I mean, I look great. I am not slurring my words. I'm not walking funny. I got drink in hand the whole time. It was all the pubs we were in. All our friends were there. My father was there. I'm watching the video, and Andy went down on one knee, and I thought, say no. Just say no. Because I wasn't there. I had no memory of it whatsoever. And I did what I did best, really. I panicked. And I went to the pub. And I found the guy in the pub that knows everything. I mean, there is one of these guys in every bar all over the world, right? He's the guy that knows everything about everything. There's a few of you here today, right? I mean, he really is the most interesting man in the world, right? So I'm telling him about my, now I'm engaged and what am I going to do? And he says to me, "Did you know if you volunteer on a kibbutz in Israel, they give you 3 meals a day, they do your laundry, and you get 50 quid a month?" And I thought, result? 3 days later, I'm in Golders Green. I've got a visa. I'm going to Israel. Now, I'm a good Irish Catholic girl. This all made sense to me. But I went for 3 months. I stayed 9. And I came out of a blackout in a Tel Aviv jail charged with drunk driving. And I didn't remember renting the car. And I can tell you that really horrible things happen to young, vulnerable women who drink like I do in places like that. And I got out on bail and I ended up jumping bail and I went to Egypt and I ended up with the wrong people in the wrong place at the wrong time, and really horrible things happen to young vulnerable women who drink like I do in places like that. And I ended up getting dumped just near the American embassy in Cairo. I had a tattered t-shirt on, a beat up pair of shorts, not another thing to my name, and a big American Marine took pity on me. It was Ramadan and everything was shut, including the embassy, and him and his mates looked after me until the embassy opened. And I truly believe that a non-alcoholic woman who had been through what I had been through would probably never drink again. But I'm a goalpost drinker. I'm one of those drinkers that says if it gets bad, I move that goalpost back just a little bit. I think if it gets worse, and I move that goalpost back just a little bit more. I wasn't 20 minutes in the air, I thought, hell, they could have killed me. I was drunk when I landed. And the truth is, I didn't know it was alcoholism. I had no clue what was going on. And the whole 80s for me are a bit like the Talking Head song, Once in a Lifetime, when he goes, "This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here?" It's like one big long blackout with little bits of reality thrown in. And coming towards the end of the 80s, I found out I was in a relationship that apparently I had been in for a while. And my partner was commenting on my drinking, which I just thought was rude, really. But I didn't know what to do, so I moved. I went to me mom in Nebraska, God's country. And I wasn't with me mom very long, and she started commenting on me drinking. And I really didn't know what to do, and I thought about my uncle. Now, my uncle had tried to 12-step me in a pub in St. Albans when I was 18. And I remember him saying, Hilde, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you need never drink again. I was 18. I thought, why the hell wouldn't I want to drink? But he could see where I was going. And of course, fast forward, it's all gone horribly wrong, and I'm thinking about him because he's still not drinking. And he was what I thought a real alcoholic was, right? I mean, my uncle went to prison. I only ever went to jail, right? My uncle went to detox centers. I only ever went to mental hospitals. So in my mind, he was what a real alcoholic was, and yet here he was not drinking. And so I thought I'd give it a go, and I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on New Year's Eve, 1989. And I picked New Year's Eve because I truly believe no alcoholic would quit drinking on New Year's Eve. I know today only alcoholics mark the calendar. Non-alcoholics never think about what day they're going to stop drinking. They don't put little X's on calendars. Virgins don't go for pregnancy tests. Doesn't happen. And I didn't know that at the time, right? So I toddled along to this meeting on New Year's Eve in Papillion, Nebraska, and they were talking about He's the Father and we're the children, and I thought I was screwed because I knew that wasn't the answer, right? I mean, I've always been a seeker. Israel, please, right? So that couldn't be the answer. So I could hear nothing else in the meeting. So I started taking everybody's inventory by their shoes because I can't look at you either. And the fella next to me had on the biggest pair of cowboy boots I had ever seen. And I remember thinking, I wonder if his IQ is any bigger than his cowboy boots. Just tearing these people to shreds. And after the meeting, I made a beeline for my car, and this big dumb cowboy followed me out. And when I got to my car, he said, "Have you got a big book?" I said, "Of course I have a big book. Doesn't everybody have a big book?" Now, I wouldn't have known a big book if you had beat me with it. But I couldn't tell him that, But without missing a beat, he went to his truck, and he gave me his big book. And I was completely speechless because it was the first time anybody had seen straight through me. And as I went to get in my car, this little old woman ran up to me and said, "Did you know if you go to a lot of meetings and you don't drink in between, you can't get drunk?" Thank you. I thought, these people are freaks. I got in my car, but as I was driving away, that little woman's voice resonated in my head. And I thought, you know what, she may have a point here. If I went to a lot of these meetings and I didn't drink in between, I might stay out of trouble. That's what was attractive to me. And that's exactly what I did. I went to a lot of meetings. My life got great really quick. If you have any time at all in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what I'm talking about. I was the rocket to stardom. I am looking good. I'm sounding good. It's all going good. The jobs are coming. I mean, it couldn't have been better. But the truth is, I'm sitting in the back of the room saying, "My name's Hilde, I'm an alcoholic," and a little voice in the back of my head is going, Well, my mother thinks so. My uncle thinks so. But you know what? I'm still in dry clean only clothes driving a nice car. My life is good. And so what happened was, the truth is, I thought you should be glad I was here because you need me, right? Arrogance and ignorance is what I suffered from, and I had no clue. I got a sponsor because people were giving me a hard time about not having one. You know what they're like, right? So I found the oldest, frailest woman I could find because I figured she wouldn't give me a hard time, right? I was wrong. But I was about 3 years sober, and it's all going good. I'm suiting up, showing up, whatever. But my sponsor got ill, and I went to see her in hospital one day. And I know today that she's probably the closest thing I had to a higher power because I had no clue what was going on in here. And I went to see her in hospital, and she's turned to me and said, "Just remember, Hilde, Alcoholics Anonymous will be here for you when you come back." I hadn't drank yet. I had no clue what she was talking about, but she could see exactly what was going on. And you know, she passed away and I pulled away. I went from 7 meetings a week to 5 to 4 to 3, 2 a week, 2 a month, because now I'm very busy. And I'm not going to Wednesday night because I can't stand the secretary. And I'm certainly not going to Friday night because that guy shares the same stuff every week, right? And now I'm taking AA's inventory. And I'm in Florida, and I'm on my way to my dream job in Germany, the job I had always wanted. I mean, I really worked for this job. And my partner had come back because I wasn't drinking. And we're walking on the beach in Florida one day, and my partner turned to me and said, "You know what, Hilde? Not only do I not like you, I don't love you drunk or sober." And I thought, are you kidding? 3.5 years I haven't had a drink for you, which was my utter problem. So I took my now ex to the airport, and as the plane took off, I walked in the bar. I started with double Jack, because that's how I drink. I started drinking on a Thursday, arrived in Germany on the Sunday, started my new job on the Monday, got done for drunk driving on the Friday, and woke up in a wet bed next to my new boss on Saturday morning. That's my drinking. Glamour drinking. And you know, I've heard people in Alcoholics Anonymous share, if you want to pick up where you left off, pick up a drink tomorrow. Absolutely not my experience. When I started drinking after not drinking, my drinking was 10 times worse and more. My blackouts were longer, the people I woke up next to were uglier, the beds were wetter. It just wasn't pretty. And I drank like that for 9 months. And on the morning after what I hope is my last night before, it was the 20th of July, 1993. I woke up in my own bed, which had become a bonus. I was alone, which was a bigger bonus. But the bed was wet, and I was still dressed from work, and all of that is really normal for me now. But I went into the bathroom, and as I was washing my face, there was blood everywhere. I had a great gash down my face. My hose were all ripped, and I had no clue what had happened the night before. And I had that moment. You know, I heard people in Alcoholics Anonymous share about the hideous 4 horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I just think, God, you're so dramatic. That morning, I knew who they were, and my heart broke. Not because I can't drink anymore. I drink with the best of them, thank you very much. But that morning, I realized I had become unpredictable to me. Did not care when I was unpredictable to you. But I realized I'd become unpredictable to me, and my heart broke. And I didn't know what else to do, so I phoned English-speaking AA, and I spoke to a fella called Steve Baker, who lets me break his anonymity. And I told him my sad old story. Poor old me, been to AA, screwed it up, whine, whine, whine. And he said something to me I truly believe saved me life. He said, "You know, Hilde, the most natural thing in the world for an alcoholic to do is drink. And that's why in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't shoot our wounded." And I believed him. It was the only reason why I went to a meeting that night, was because I thought he understood. So I'm driving over to this meeting, and my head kicks in, because I suffer from alcoholism. And my head goes, hang on a minute. I don't want anybody to think I'm new, right? I don't want anybody to think I don't know what's going on in here. So I have a plan now, and my plan is that I'm going to sit in the back, get a little bit of time, and then tell you I've come back, right? I don't want you to think, you know. But what happened was I walked into this room in Hunsbrook, Holland. There was 7 people in the room for an hour and a half. And nobody was letting me pass, right? So I ended up telling all of them my sad old story. And after the meeting, they were looking for somebody to make the tea and coffee. And I was thinking, wow, I hope they find somebody. I mean, that's an important commitment. And this voice from across the room went, Hilde will do it. And I thought, Hilde who? This meeting was Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and this is Tuesday night. And I said, hang on a minute, I don't know if I'm going to be sober on Thursday. It seemed like a really long time to me. And she said, if you want to stay sober, you'll make the tea and coffee. Now, my head went, who is this psycho woman, and why is she picking on me? But what came out of my mouth was, oh, okay, because I was tired. You know, if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous today, I really hope you're tired. I hope you're willing, because I would have done anything that woman suggested, and I tried, because I just didn't have a better plan. I just didn't know what else to do. And I didn't know if it was the Thursday or the Saturday, but this woman came over to me and said, you should try 90 meetings in 90 days. I said, do you see where we are? Hunsbrook, Holland. It is nowhere. Hang a left. She said, oh, I know where we are, Hilde. But they have a meeting in Dusseldorf on Friday night and Kaiserslautern on Wednesday and Dahan on Monday. I was like, I said, I'm not driving all over God's acre for a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not happening. She goes, how far did you drive for a drink? It's just so unfair. So I started tormenting my home group, because anytime I got lost when I was drinking, I would pull into a B&B, get a couple of bottles, and call it a day. I did it on the way to job interviews, on weddings. It didn't matter. If I got lost, all bets were off. So I started tormenting my home group. I'd say, I'm going to Dusseldorf tomorrow night. Does anybody want to go? The guy I hated the most, always went, I'll go with you, Hilde. It's like anybody but you, right? But every Friday, Mike would show up, and we would drive an hour and a half to Dusseldorf for an hour and a half's meeting, for an hour's coffee afterwards, and an hour and a half's drive home. And I wanted to kill him the entire time. I have left skid marks on the Autobahn where I've pulled over to tell him to get out. And he had like 8 years at the time, and he just laughed. We're going to be late if you don't get going. I'm like, I tell you what I loved about that is where I got sober, I really learned principles before personalities. You have to when you hate your home group. You know, it's a necessity. And this woman, by default, she was a big American Indian woman, and the truth is she frightened me. I really thought if I drank, she was going to hunt me down like a dog. And she was the only other woman in the meeting, so she became my sponsor. I was reading something in the literature one night, and I thought it was pretty stupid, but, you know, the truth is, I thought the literature was poorly written. I took direction from a woman I neither liked nor understood. I did commitments that I thought were pointless, and somewhere along the way, I got here. You know, it has worked for me, but I called her up in the middle of the night one night and said, Sandy, I'm reading this thing in the book, and I was wondering, maybe you'd be willing to sponsor me. And she went, I have been, but thanks for making it official. And that's how I got my sponsor. And, you know, she was good as gold to me, actually. I was 9 months sober. I went over. I was sitting in her kitchen, and I said, I got a promotion, and they're sending me to Belgium. And she said, well, what's the problem, Hilde? I said, well, I'm only 9 months sober. I'm not supposed to have any major changes in the first year. She said, I'm really sorry. Your company didn't get the memo. Pack your bags, you know. So I moved to Belgium, and, you know, when I was in Belgium, I tried duvet therapy, you know, where you get home from work, get under the duvet, get up the next day, and hope it all changes. It didn't work, but I didn't drink. And finally, Sandy told me to blow my dust off my big book and get my happy little arse 20 minutes up the road to the Brussels meeting. And when I got there, I was to share honestly. So I was like, whatever. So I went to this meeting, and they had almost no literature, and their coffee was like sludge. And when I shared, I told them so. And afterwards, they gave me the literature commitment, and they took me to coffee. And I learned about putting me hand out again, you know, and my sobriety hasn't really been textbook sobriety, but it has worked for me, you know. I was about 14 months sober when I got offered a job in London, and I did it all different. I went over every weekend. I had a home group before I moved there. People in AA helped me find a flat. and it all went really smooth. And I learned about doing something different for a different result. I had heard you share that, but I hadn't understood what it was until I did it. And I was about 2.5 years sober, and I decided to change my career. I was going to go back to university. I was going to go into a helping profession. I was going to help people. 2.5 years sober, it never dawned on me. I don't like people enough to want to do that. But I started applying to universities. I was 4 years sober when I finally got accepted, and I got my first tattoo and my first motorcycle. And I was 4.5 years sober. I had a motorcycle accident, so I got a bigger tattoo and a bigger motorcycle. And I started my second year at university. And you know, when I was 6.5 years sober, I was tootling along quite nicely in Alcoholics Anonymous. I am being of service. I'm in the book. I'm doing the steps. I'm helping other women do the steps. And it's all going really well. And as I was leaving the flat for a conference in the south of England, the phone rang, and it was me mom. And my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And she asked me if I would come out to California when she had her operations that were coming up in a couple of months. And I said I would. And you know, it may not seem like a huge deal to you, but it was massive to me because nobody in my family ever gave me bad news. Because I'd go on a bender, and now I'm missing, and they have the bad news. And yet here me mom was asking me to come out. And I continued on to that conference, and I was standing in line for registration, and a fellow who had known me since I got sober pulled me aside and said, "Would you share at the midnight meeting?" And I said, "You know, I'm really not up for it." And he said, "Actually, you look like you need to share." And what I didn't realize was me outsides were starting to match me insides. And he said, "You know, there'll be nobody there. The old timers meeting is going on at the same time. It'll be fine." I was like, all right, fine. So I go to this meeting. There's about 250 people in the room. And I cried for the first time when I shared about me mom. I had never cried in Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, when you cried, I used to tap your knee, you know, sorry. I had no frame of reference. I had nothing. But I cried when I shared about my mom. And you know, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous touched me that day. Because a guy I barely knew offered me a flight to Los Angeles if I couldn't afford it. And I realized I was part of something bigger than a meeting, that I was part of the fellowship, and that I was in the middle of the bed. And you know, I had spent my entire sobriety asking my sponsor, how do I make amends to this woman, my mom, right, whose heart I broke? You know, I called her collect from foreign jails when she could do nothing. And my sponsor kept saying, it's God's time, not yours, and when the time is right, you'll know. And so I came out. She was in Pasadena at Huntington Hospital, and the old 202 Club was across the street. And, you know, I made sure I was there when she woke up, and I was there when she went to sleep, and I shot across to meetings. And oddly enough, right, is it odd or is it God? Oddly enough, because of what I had been doing at university, I got to bring my mom home early and nurse her at home. And I was changing her tubes one day, and my mom turned to me and said, you know, Hilde, I don't know how I'll ever repay you. I said, you don't get it. 6.5 years I have waited for this moment when I get to be the daughter you deserved instead of the one you had. You know, that's Alcoholics Anonymous. I love that thing. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. And that's been my sobriety, not the years. And my mom and I have a great relationship today. We've really come a long way, and I've spent a lot of time. We moved out here when I was 8 years sober to be closer to her. And a few years ago, I had to go back to Ireland because my partner I have today, was having visa issues. And we went back to Ireland for a year. And, you know, the truth is I had a tough time in Ireland. And I am well trained in Alcoholics Anonymous. I phone my sponsor every day, and I phoned her every day from Ireland. And she's completely up to date. And finally, I said to her, look, I don't know what to do, Sharon. And she said, you know, you need to get on an effing plane. And I came back out to California, and I was 15.5 years sober. I was jobless, penniless, sleeping on my mom's floor. Not where I wanted to be at 15.5 years sober. And I couldn't get a job, and I didn't know what to do, and I kept whining. And finally, Sharon said to me, look, do you not realize that this is another way to make amends to your mother? By allowing her to be your mother? Aren't you guys having dinner certain nights of the week? And I was like, well, yeah, you know. And aren't you watching certain shows on telly together? And I was like, well, yeah. She said, you know, just go with it for now. And of course, I got a job, and then I got a better job, and my partner found a way to come back into the country, and we got a nice flat and nice cars, and it all was tootling along really well. And October of last year, the company I was working for was going out of business, and I was going to be out of work. And I called me mom, and I said, you know, Mom, the company's going under. I'm going to be out of a job. And she said, you can come live with me. It took my mother 24 hours, literally, to realize I had just given her bad news. She phoned me the next day and said, oh, Hilde, I'm really sorry about your job. It's like, you know, too late. And, you know, last April, I was up for 2 jobs at the same time. And one was with unmanned drones for the military, and the other was with the spirit of giving. Now, if you've had more than a 10-minute conversation with me, you know that I am an unmanned drones for the military kind of gal, right? So I'm talking to my sponsor, and she says, I think the spirit of giving would be good for you. Of course you do, because you're an ex-bong wine drinking hippie, you know. I said, let's leave it to God, right? Trying to be a smartass. Let's leave it to God. So we decided whoever called first is the job I would take. And since April, I have been working for the Spirit of Giving. We have Barefoot Fridays and a slide from the 2nd floor to the 1st. I've been down the slide twice, you know. It just shows I don't know what's good for me. You know, I am the product of really strong sponsorship. I follow directions even when it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. But I've never been led wrong. And the truth is, I came to you a lying, bedwetting whore. I just wanted to stay out of wet beds with ugly people. But somewhere along the way, you have turned me into a good friend, a loving and monogamous partner, and a true daughter to my mother. And for that, I thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. changes. You can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.